Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, we're about ready to see, it looks like at least, some increase in food prices for some of the most basic cheap foods. That's going to cause a lot of problems with everyone in the economy when the things that are the cheapest that you fall back to, those staples, the stuff that the poorer people, that they can't afford to go out and buy their steaks and their fresh vegetables all the time. They stick with more of the cheap filler foods. It's going to cause some problems, and it's also going to cause problems for you and I as prepared-minded people, us preppers, that we kind of, a lot of our preps is really focused in these couple of areas. And I'm speaking of rice and wheat. You're probably all well aware of the problems with wheat right now, with the Black Sea grain deal falling through with Russia and Ukraine. A huge chunk of the world's wheat comes out of that area, and other grains too, but especially wheat comes out of that area. Now, that doesn't directly affect the United States, but it will. It's most of that grain goes to Africa, the Middle East, Asia, places like that. And it looks like as of right now, not much is going to be getting out. Russia has also been bombarding the Odessa port in retaliation to some of the things that Ukraine has done to Russia. They've been, dropping cluster munitions inside of Russia. They struck that bridge going into Crimea. They've been sending kamikaze drones into Crimea. So Russia's retaliating by striking the Odessa port, and authorities in Odessa have been reporting that a lot of the port's infrastructure has been damaged just in the last few days. How much of it's going to affect grain shipments and ports and stuff, because that's the main port that most all the grain gets exported out of, I don't know. But there's also the problem that because the grain deal is over, will ships be able to transverse that area without getting bombarded? Because both Ukraine and Russia have stated that they would look at any ship going through that area as a potential threat. And there's also evidence that up until now, Ukraine has been using grain ships, that are transporting the grain as a cover for bringing in munitions. Not sure on the exact proof of that, but there does seem to be some evidence indicating that. So that's the grain, the wheat area. It's going to greatly affect things. For those of you that may not remember that, a shortage of grain, a shortage of wheat was one of the big causes, at least initially, of the Arab Spring several years ago, that caused a lot of problems throughout the Middle Eastern world. So we could certainly see that happen again. We've already been dealing with parts of Eastern Africa and throughout the Middle East that they're struggling in some areas because of food supplies, and so this is going to greatly affect that, and it's going to affect the United States in the sense that if the next largest producer and exporter of grain is the United States. So if countries can't get their grain from Ukraine, then they're going to try to get it from us, which is going to cause a bigger drain on our supply and what we send out, which is going to increase the cost. But of course, as you all know, there's also the problem that we've been dealing with a major drought through the grain belt of the United States. And I've been hearing from personally, I've had farmers directly contact me. They're big wheat farmers in Kansas and stuff, saying that they're not producing anything, or they're producing very, very little, or the wheat quality is so poor, it's awful, or they've just they've given up on this year's harvest and they're plowing it under, and they're getting it ready for next year because they didn't get anything. So there's going to be shortages in that area and causing wheat prices to go up. And wheat is a big staple. I mean, how many things, your pastas, your breads, so on and so forth, that wheat is a major prepper food. So if you're able to buy it, if it's something you can eat and you're able to buy it, that might be something you should put a little focus on here in the upcoming days or weeks, because that problem's just going to continually get worsen. That's all it is. And because as far as I know, especially in like Ukraine and Russia, I think their harvesting time is right about now. Maybe it's already happened or it's getting ready, but it's right in this time period, from what I understand, is their harvesting time. So they're going to be harvesting all this wheat and not be able to get it, to ship, or make it very difficult. Even if they're able to ship it, I was reading something, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that some of these companies that do shipping of grain, they said they could probably do it, but they might have to hire on, different companies to kind of as escort ships, kind of almost have their own little mercenary military of sorts to have escort ships. Well, that's going to cost money. I mean, they're all the way around, whether they can't get it to market or it's going to cost a lot more money to get it to market, it's going to be devastating. And there's another thing, I talked about this last night in our live stream. If you missed it, the live stream is still up. This one I left up. A lot of times I delete the live streams right afterwards on YouTube, because sometimes we talk about things that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. And so as soon as it's over, I'll delete it to try to prevent the channel getting another strike and getting suspended. But this one, we left it up. I didn't feel that there was anything said that was too dangerous. So you can still go watch the live stream. And of course, you can always watch it over on Rumble. Anyways, we talked about the rice. So rice is the next big one on the chopping block. India announced this past week that they're ending the exportation of rice. India produces something like 40% of the world's rice supply. And this one will directly affect the United States because the big bulk of our rice in the United States comes from India. I mean, there are places here in the United States that grow rice. There are other countries that grow rice, but the big bulk of it comes from India. And the fact that rice is so cheap, in large part, is because a big bulk of it comes from India. So that is going to directly affect a lot of people. They're not restricting every bit of rice, but the vast majority. There's like one type of their more high-end rice. I can't remember, balsamic. I don't remember which one it was. I don't think it was jasmine. But one of their types of rices they're going to go ahead and export, but the rest of it they're not. And that's going to cause some major havoc. In fact, already this video was posted yesterday. This is in Dallas, Texas. I believe this is at a Costco in Dallas, Texas. This is over the last couple of days, where people are panic buying rice. Some people speculate that some of these people that are panic buying this rice may be business owners, maybe they're restaurateurs, that, whether it's Asian food or Hispanic food that, sells a lot of rice. That may be what we're seeing here. But still, the fact is that people are panic buying rice already because they're hearing that rice is either going to get really hard to get or get really expensive, or both. Rice again. I mean, how many times you hear preppers, myself included, say, get your buckets of beans and rice. Well, rice may not be a primary food source anymore for preppers. It's not the healthiest thing to eat. It's not the worst thing you can eat, but it is calorie dense. You can, it's lasts a long time, and you can store it away and have a calorie source. And it's a good filler food. So that may become very short supply soon, and most likely the price is going to go up to you because the market price has already increased. The market price of wheat and the market price of rice have both skyrocketed. So this is something that is going to directly affect. I mean, look at when you look at around the world, a lot of struggling third world countries where there's a lot of starvation and humanitarian aid being sent in to try to help these starving areas where there's famine and other things. Wheat and rice are the two of the main things that get sent in, and now there's going to be a shortage of both, and both of them are going to be more expensive. All around, it's just a bad deal. And these are only two things when we're talking about food. There's other things that are becoming in more short supply, or the price is continually going up. So this is an area that you and I, as preppers, we need to seriously consider and get out there. If you don't have enough of either of these two products, you should probably try to start buying them soon. Look for restaurant supply stores, things like Costco and Sam's Club, where you can buy the stuff in 25-pound bags. But then also the restaurant supply stores are a good place to go to try to get this. And it certainly wouldn't hurt to go out. And, one of the reasons why as preppers we like this, because you can take $100 and you can go out and you can buy quite a bit of rice. You can buy, depending on where you're at, 50 to 100 pounds or more of rice for around $100. And that's quite a bit of food. It's going to last you quite a bit. I mean, who wants to just eat plain old rice? That's why you add all the other stuff to it. But the point is that you can get it pretty cheaply, but that time may have already ended. So I would suggest, if you're able to go out and get some of that. Same way with wheat. If you don't have a flour mill, not a grinder, they're two different things, but a flour mill to mill that wheat berries down into flour, then about the only thing you're going to be able to do is cook it whole, like the whole wheat berries, and cook it as a porridge, which is fine. I've eaten it many times, but you're not going to be making bread with it. So you probably want to try to get which every prepper should have, a decent flour mill. They're not the cheapest things. We have one that it's a Nesco. I'll try, if I can remember, to leave a link down in the description. I don't get any benefit or anything from them, but it is a good one. It's a hand crank. You can add an electric motor to it, but it is a hand crank, and I wanted that as opposed to all the ones that are just sheer, strictly electric. I wanted a hand crank so that, if the power goes out or whatever, we can still use it, and it works very well. It's very simple, very plain, but it's an American-made one, as opposed to a lot of these really cheap Chinese knockoffs that they don't last. This one does. In fact, I've even spoken with the owner a couple of times, so it's a good quality product. But we have to be thinking about these things. I think for those of you that's been a prepper for a while, this kind of stuff seems very elementary, very basic, and you've probably moved past that, right? You're on to stocking up on more advanced things. You're doing more advanced skill development, training, things like that. And so you've moved past the, oh yeah, beans and rice and wheat and that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean we don't do it anymore. Especially when we see something like this happen. It doesn't hurt, buy you some 5-gallon buckets and some Mylar bags and some rice and dump in it and seal it up, and you have, quite a bit of food there, a lot of calories that you can just store away. And even if it's, even if you've set your goal at 300 pounds, let's say, and you have 300 pounds, is it really going to be a big painful deal to get another 300 pounds of rice over the next couple of weeks? For a lot of you, the answer is no. And you've added additional food calories to your preps, especially with something that's going to become hard to get. And who knows, depending on the situation, it could also be a bartering tool because the scarcity of it. So I would certainly be looking at those things. Other food products that you should probably have, canned foods, always need to be stocking up on those, rotating them out. With canned foods, that's not something you just put on the shelf for the next 20 years and forget about it. You get your kind of your supply built to where it's like your own little storeroom, and then you're eating out of it and you're rotating it. So it's just like at a store when you go buy new product, new cans, you put them in the back, you rotate the old stuff to the front, and you're eating out of that. That way, because most canned food will last about 5 years if it's kept in a temperature control environment. Usually it's going to last about 5 years, give or take. And so you rotate that stuff out. You do that with all your food because you're going to need it, folks. Quit this thing that, well, maybe food isn't that big a deal. You need to be producing your own food, growing it, raising it, butchering it, canning it, preserving it, hunting it, fishing it. Food is a huge, huge deal. You need to be stocking up on it. Another place that you can stock up on it is with my partners at My Patriot Supply. There's a link down in the description below for long-term freeze-dried food. That's not the only thing you should be buying. A lot of people think that, you just buy a bunch of that and you're good. I mean, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think a little bit of that is helpful. Even if you buy a 2 to 4 week supply of My Patriot Supply or something like that, and even if it's one that I'm not pushing, emergency food. The reason why I think that that's good is when it all hits the fan and there's a panic or the power goes out. You're in panic mode. You know, your adrenaline is skyrocketing, and you're trying to think of all the things that you've been planning for, your plan. What do I got to do next? What do I got to do next? And you're not going to have the time and energy and the focus to start pulling out food and actually making a meal, right? So with this emergency freeze-dried food, it's something that you can just pop it open, dump some hot, boiling water on it, and you have a good, healthy meal for the whole family to eat. If you have at least a 2 to 4 week supply of that, you don't have to worry about, what am I going to do for cooking? How am I going to feed my kids? I got to cook all this, because it's going to be a lot of manual labor now. If it all happens, if the power all goes out because of, some grid attack that they keep threatening is going to happen, there's going to be a lot of manual labor in food production, creating a meal, whereas this, you don't have to. And so after the 2 to 4 weeks pass, things are a little bit more calm. You're kind of finding your groove in this apocalypse now. And then you can kind of start actually cooking normal meals. But for that first few weeks, you're going to want something that's really easy and yet healthy, because you're going to be burning a lot of calories. And My Patriot Supply is one of those great places you can do that. So there is a link in the description below, or you can just go to preparewithtravis.com. Either way you look at it, you need to be reevaluating your food. Like I said, maybe you've moved on to bigger and better things. You're buying night vision, and you're buying tractors, and you're buying spinning wheels and all this kind of stuff. That's great. But don't forget your food. The most basic things right now are going to start going up in price and going to become difficult to get because of the problems that's happening in 2 major areas of long-term survival food, rice and wheat. So start getting your houses in order. It should just be a kind of an everyday thing that you're kind of thinking of what do I do next? What's my next goal? So that you can get more and more ready for the coming storm. You need to be preparing mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.